So before your final year at Miami, there's a lot of conversations revolved around Shedeur Sanders. Obviously, I'm assuming you guys have a great relationship. Some of the clips you've seen and stuff like that. What is it like for you to have like this rivalry with Shedeur?
I don't have a rivalry with him. That's my boy. So at the end of the day, this whole process, we thought me and him were going to be 1 and 2 the whole time. Whether he's 1, I'm 2. Whether I'm 1, he's 2. And so that's just always been, our mindset. It didn't go that way. I thought he was one of the better quarterbacks in the draft as well, even throughout college. A lot of stuff out there on him ain't really, the truth, just because they spin it different ways. Like they spin stuff about me different ways. But I mean, when he gets his chance, become a starter, I know he's gonna make the most of it. And I'm ready to get back to work with him, after the season, talk some more stuff to him.
Cam Ward directly challenged the uneven standards applied to Shedeur Sanders, calling them inconsistent and unfair. By insisting that performance, not politics, guide evaluation, he shifted the discussion from one player to a league-wide problem. Sanders' treatment now serves as a test of how the NFL supports and evaluates emerging quarterbacks.
I feel a special relationship, especially me. First getting to know him 5 years ago when I started working with him. But it did surprise me because he's a good quarterback. He doesn't get a lot of credit that he deserves. Especially the plays that he made in Colorado. A lot of quarterbacks in the country are making those plays. So when he gets this opportunity, I'm pretty sure he'll have it soon today. He'll make sure he'll make plays on the field.
Cam Ward's public challenge to the treatment of Shedeur Sanders brought the issue into clear view. For months, discussion around Sanders has centered on his profile, major compensation, a prominent Nike deal, and the expectation to stabilize a struggling franchise. Rather than a standard evaluation of a top prospect, he has faced sustained skepticism from analysts, fans, and league voices. Ward's comments underscored that the standards being applied to Sanders diverge from those used with other rookies. By stating it directly, he did more than support another quarterback. He identified a broader problem in how the league responds to young players with significant visibility. The takeaway is direct. Assessments should reflect on-field performance and development, not external narratives.
A generational talent. I'm gonna prove him right. I'm gonna prove him right, don't worry.
Oh my God.
An article came out today. I'm generational. So I guess it's article versus article. I like that you think that, man. But we all know the truth. What? Trav gonna be first?
You generational, I'm legendary.
That's cool. We can be legendary. Legendary, get their ass.
We'll start going in like 5 minutes.
Shedeur Sanders entered the league with more than a playbook. He brought a public brand, a family legacy, and expectations unusual for a first-year quarterback. Before his first regular season throw, he was already positioned at the center of attention. Rather than assess him on that reality and his on-field ability, many voices reduced him to marketing, treating visibility as proof of hype instead of performance. Cam Ward pushed back on that framing. His point was simple: judge Sanders by the same criteria applied to other rookies. With Sanders' resume, production, leadership, and composure, most first-year quarterbacks would be discussed as long-term cornerstones. The evaluation should be consistent, focused on development and results, not perception.
This is the process with Shedeur, who I know is a buddy of yours, and how do you think both of you guys will end up doing in the league?
I think we'll both end up being one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I just think the work that me and him are willing to put in, the relationship we have to constantly compete each and every day, to better our craft, for ourselves. I just think it's gonna end up paying off for us in the long run.
Do you guys kid each other about who's going first, and how much does that matter to you?
Yeah, we play around, we joke around with it. Really don't mean nothing. The draft pick will never mean anything. At the end of the day, you got to show whether you can prove each and every Sunday. You can't just do it 1 year.
Disrespect shows up in two patterns. First, Shedeur Sanders is repeatedly framed through his father, Deion Sanders, as if lineage erases his own work. Discussion drifts to pedigree instead of what the film shows. Second, his visibility is treated with suspicion. His audience reach, partnerships, and ability to lift ratings are labeled hype rather than recognized as value. Instead of acknowledging that he drives demand and expands the stage for his team, critics call it an unfair edge. The result is a skewed evaluation. Star power is held against him while on-field production gets pushed aside. The standard should be consistent. Assess the tape and the development, not the last name or the attention it brings.
Well, Ward, where microfact.
Cam Ward's remarks went beyond defending Shedeur Sanders. They confronted how the league manages star power. The reality is simple. The NFL markets visibility, but resists it when a player doesn't follow the expected script. Rookies are supposed to be quiet, deferential, and grateful for limited leverage. Sanders arrived with leverage, brand reach, major endorsements, and confidence. And that presence was recast as entitlement. Instead of treating those factors as earned advantages, much of the commentary used them to diminish him. Ward called out that contradiction. The same influence the league sells to audiences is criticized when a young player exercises it. His point is a standards problem, not a personality dispute. Evaluate Sanders on his preparation, leadership, and results. Don't penalize him for having a platform or for using the leverage that the modern NFL itself helps create.
Now it sounds like the Cleveland Browns are going to all but imprison Shedeur Sanders in the football sense of a very talented rookie quarterback who obviously needs reps, needs an opportunity, and who now, barring some miraculous luck, will not get the opportunity to play in a single real game. I'm sure many around the NFL are celebrating as we speak. They are chuckling about this. Many in the NFL wanted to teach Shedeur and his daddy.
Cleveland became the center of the conversation. With Shedeur Sanders attached to a major Nike partnership, the expectation was straightforward. He should be given real game reps. The Browns instead leaned on Joe Flacco as the default choice, treating stability as the safer path while sidelining a quarterback with clear cultural and commercial pull. Each week Sanders didn't see the field, scrutiny grew. Commentary questioned the value of his contract environment and relevance, and fan debate shifted from development to doubt. That wasn't measured evaluation. It was a delay framed as prudence that eroded confidence in the process. Cam Ward reset the terms of the debate. He pointed to an uneven standard. When veterans or other young players secure significant endorsements, it's considered smart business. When Sanders does it at scale, it's recast as ego or hype. Even the scope of his off-field agreements became ammunition against him rather than evidence of market demand. Ward's position is simple. Use one standard. Assess Sanders on preparation, decision-making, and progression, not on discomfort with his platform. Treat visibility as an asset, not a disqualifier. The issue isn't attitude or branding, it's the consistency of the evaluation. Ward called it directly. The treatment has been unequal, and it should be corrected by aligning opportunity with performance criteria.
Fans need to recognize there's not a team in the league he'd start for. Not one. That's not ridiculous, that's not unfair, that's not a vast conspiracy.
Shedeur Sanders fans are Angel Reese fans. They're just fair weather fans who don't really give a fuck about the sport. Most of them are just Dion fucking groupies that followed him when he went to fucking Colorado, just like Angel Reese's fans had never watched basketball prior to her playing at LSU, and they followed her to the WNBA and don't know shit about the sport. That's it. Now Dion fucking groupies are running around acting like, oh, this is payback to his dad.
The timing is pivotal. Shedeur Sanders isn't trying to blend into the league's background. He's shaping the agenda. He drives debate segments, fuels short-form highlights, and moves merchandise at a pace most rookies never approach. By the metrics that define modern attention, he is the draw. Yet, a segment of observers continues to undercut him, not because of shortcomings on tape, but because of discomfort with how prominent he already is. Cam Ward put words to what many could see. Coverage around Sanders has been filtered through reaction to his visibility, rather than a clear read of his performance and growth. The market has already weighed in. Demand is real, not manufactured. Nike's record-level rookie endorsement aligned with that reality, signaling long-term value and cultural reach. This exposes a core contradiction. The NFL depends on star power to sell tickets, fill stadiums, and boost ratings, but it resists stars who set terms on their own. Visibility is celebrated until a player exercises it. The fix is straightforward. Apply one standard. Evaluate Sanders on preparation, decision-making, and results, and treat his platform as the asset it is. If the league benefits from his presence, its evaluation practices should reflect that same same reality, consistently and without penalty for scale. Shedeur Sanders does not depend on league promotion. He established his platform before the NFL and continues to expand it on his own terms. That autonomy challenges the status quo. Cam Ward's support was more than a defense of a teammate. It was a warning that if the league holds to outdated expectations, it risks falling behind the very players who drive audience attention and revenue. Claims that Sanders lacks real popularity ignore measurable facts. A large, active following, consistent merchandise demand, and sustained coverage across major outlets. Doubts about his standing as a quarterback overlook his college production and growth indicators. The pattern is familiar. Efforts to minimize him increase his reach. Each skeptical headline widens the spotlight, and each dismissive take creates more engagement. You cannot reduce a player built for visibility by arguing he should be less visible. The practical outcome is the opposite. Scrutiny becomes signal. Sanders is not merely enduring criticism, he is turning it into momentum, converting attention into leverage on and off the field. They have never loathed college football itself. They have resisted the people determined to reshape it. When Deion Sanders, black, direct, unapologetic, walks into a room of power brokers and speaks with authority instead of deference, critics recoil. During his playing days, they complained about celebrations and gold chains. Now that he is a head coach, mentor, and father, they label him something more polite, but just as dismissive, a problem. At Big 12 Media Days, Sanders addressed the accelerating chaos of the name, image, likeness market. He said college football needs a salary cap, not to hobble players, but to impose order on a system that showers unproven freshmen with seven-figure promises while the rest of a roster hunts for scraps. He called the situation unsustainable. Within hours, ESPN commentator Paul Feinbaum branded him a hypocrite, arguing that Sanders profited from NIL at Jackson State and now wants rules only because his most marketable athletes have moved on. The accusation spread quickly because it fit a comfortable storyline. Outspoken black coach gains from change, then protests when the advantage disappears. That framing ignores context. Sanders never criticized players earning money. At Jackson State, he urged corporate sponsors to partner with athletes who had been invisible to major brands for decades. What he wants now is stability, standardized guidelines, basic financial literacy, and roster balance that prevents locker rooms from fracturing over uneven payouts. When other coaches, Nick Saban, Dabo Swinney, Lane Kiffin, voiced similar concerns, they were praised for foresight. When Sanders spoke, the tone shifted to suspicion. The difference is not the message, it is the messenger. Feinbaum's response followed a familiar script. When black leaders question the structure of the sport, their motives are interrogated, their credibility attacked, and their competence doubted. He did not level the same charge at Jimbo Fisher when Fisher complained that NIL disturbed recruiting. He stayed silent when Kiffin lamented the transfer portal. But Sanders, who raised enrollment and television ratings at Jackson State, brought unprecedented attention to Colorado in one season and consistently mentors players beyond football, was called opportunistic. Feinbaum dismissed the cultural impact Sanders created. The exposure for historically black colleges, the draft picks developed, the infrastructure improved, reducing his work to a marketing stunt dependent on star sons Shedeur and Shiloh or two-way standout Travis Hunter. Sanders did not retaliate. He returned to practice, media obligations, and recruiting. His confidence is rooted in faith and in the responsibility he feels toward young athletes whose lives will extend decades beyond their highlight clips. When he asks for NIL boundaries, he is thinking about freshmen handed large sums without guidance, families unprepared for sudden wealth, and programs that abandon kids once production stalls. He has watched that cycle from the inside. He wants protections, not restrictions. Critics predicted Colorado would fade once Shedeur and Hunter leave. Instead, Sanders signed blue-chip quarterback G.J. Lewis and a wave of transfers eager to join a program that values personal growth as much as on-field wins. Recruits see a coach who challenges the status quo, who places black culture at the program's center without apology, and who will remain visible when social media buzz cools. They recognize that Sanders does not chase attention, attention follows his results. Media outlets reduced the upcoming Buffaloes season to a win total prop. 6 victories, give or take. Sanders is playing a longer game. He wants to show young athletes, especially black athletes, that they can lead authentically, speak with conviction, and refuse to shrink for access. Success measured only by the scoreboard misses the point. If Sanders builds men who graduate with financial literacy, self-confidence, and community awareness, he will consider the mission successful, even if Colorado finishes with 5 wins instead of 10. None of that registers with commentators invested in an older hierarchy. For them, leadership should remain predictable, reserved posture, muted tone, minimal cultural expression. Sanders contradicts that image. The possibility that his methods could spread to other coaches, to other programs, threatens a model that has kept decision-making and revenue streams concentrated for generations. So the debate is not about hypocrisy or payroll ceilings. It is about control of the narrative and who is deemed qualified to write it. Sanders refuses to surrender that authority. He knows order is necessary. He also knows whose voices have been ignored whenever real reform is discussed. By speaking plainly, he forces television panels, athletic directors, and conference commissioners to confront issues they would rather defer: financial education, equitable resource distribution, and consistent national standards. Whether Colorado exceeds betting lines this fall will not change the trajectory Sanders has already set. He made Boulder relevant, energized recruiting beyond traditional power corridors, and broadened college football's cultural reach. That influence will persist long after social media debates cool. If his call for NIL structure eventually becomes policy, as the NCAA and Congress now contemplate, Feinbaum's soundbite will fade while Sanders' imprint endures. In the end, accusations of hypocrisy say more about the accuser than the coach. Sanders has remained consistent: empower athletes, hold adults accountable, and inject stability before unchecked money corrodes the locker room. The people who stand to lose clout in that environment prefer the chaos they can manipulate. Sanders prefers a system that nurtures the players who make the sport worth watching. His advocacy is rooted in experience, not self-interest, and his critics will have to decide whether to engage with that reality or keep shouting from the sidelines. Chris Carter's televised assessment of Shedeur Sanders triggered immediate pushback from Cleveland fans, local media, and even several Browns veterans. Carter dismissed Sanders, a fifth-round pick, as unprepared to start and framed the growing interest around him as purely a byproduct of surname recognition. Since that segment aired, practice reports have told a very different story. Observers inside the Browns facility describe a rookie quarterback who is closing the gap on Kenny Pickett and Dillon Gabriel with surprising speed. Sanders first turned heads in rookie minicamp by directing the huddle with a calm that belied his inexperience. Position coaches reported that he rarely repeated mental errors during installation periods, a trait they rank highly when grading young quarterbacks. In organized team activities, he showed consistent timing on intermediate routes, kept turnover numbers low in 7-on-7 periods, and demonstrated early command of Kevin Stefanski's protection calls. That steady execution earned him a handful of first-team snaps, reps that would ordinarily have belonged to Pickett by default. By mandatory minicamp, the rotation had shifted again. Practice notes from beat reporters detail the rise in Sanders' workload each day. Red zone series against the starting defense, 2-minute drills, and full field scrimmage possessions in which he checked out of called plays when fronts dictated it. Mary Kay Cabot, initially skeptical Sanders would challenge for game day snaps in 2025, wrote after consecutive sessions in mid-June that his footwork, release speed, and pocket management had, quote, meaningfully tightened since rookie camp. Her tone marked a clear departure from early spring projections that labeled Sanders a long-term developmental project. The broader quarterback context in Cleveland magnifies that progress. Deshaun Watson's availability and form remain uncertain after 2 injury-interrupted seasons, while Pickett's transition from Pittsburgh has been uneven. Dillon Gabriel's arm strength is evident, but coaches continue to stress hesitation in his full-field reads. Against that backdrop, Sanders' quick decision-making and mechanical efficiency have begun to look less like a pleasant surprise and more like the roster's most reliable short-term plan. Inside the locker room, acceptance has followed performance. Wide receivers cite Sanders' ball placement on outbreaking routes, noting that the ball routinely arrives on the upfield shoulder, a small but essential detail that allows for yards after the catch. Offensive linemen appreciate his pocket awareness. Joel Bitonio remarked privately that Sanders slides up instead of bailing when edge pressure flashes. Defensive backs say his eye discipline forces them to hold coverage longer than they expected against a rookie. Such cross-positional respect develops only when day-to-day tape shows tangible improvement. The reaction to Carter's critique highlights a recurring double standard applied to young black quarterbacks. Traits celebrated as swagger or confidence in other players were labeled arrogance when associated with Sanders, yet the quarterback himself has not responded publicly. There have been no subtle social media jabs, no mention of critics in interviews, only repeated references to competing for every rep and learning from veterans. That measured approach, combined with hard evidence from practice, has softened earlier doubts among coaches who prioritize demeanor as much as arm talent. Within the coaching staff, the discussion now centers on readiness thresholds. Stefanski's scheme relies heavily on quick rhythm throws, defined reads, and disciplined pocket movement. Those requirements align with Sanders' strengths: a compact release, willingness to target the middle of the field, and instinctive timing on RPO concepts carried over from his college tape. Staffers reviewing cut-ups from joint practices note that his internal clock already approximates NFL speed, a metric they did not expect to see until mid-season at best. If that trajectory continues through preseason games, the Browns face a consequential decision. Starting a 5th-round rookie 6 weeks after training camp opens would unsettle salary cap assumptions, depth chart politics, and external perceptions of organizational stability. Yet the internal mandate remains clear. The most prepared quarterback will play. That standard places Sanders in genuine contention because every practice metric used to grade readiness, turnover ratio, red zone efficiency, third down conversion rate has trended in his favor since early June. The organizational stakes are considerable. Cleveland has cycled through starting quarterbacks at a startling pace over the past decade, shifting from first-round investments like Baker Mayfield to high-cost gambles such as Watson, each move packaged as the long-awaited solution. A rookie chosen outside the first 100 picks ascending to the top of the depth chart would challenge long-held league assumptions about draft pedigree and opportunity. It would also validate the evaluation philosophy that prioritized Sanders' intangibles, processing speed, leadership presence, over conventional arm strength thresholds that pushed him down the draft board. Carter's televised remarks now sit awkwardly alongside daily updates from Berea. His critique relied on pre-draft labels and the presumption that a late-round passer with a famous father would need a redshirt year. Practice film contradicts that stance. Sanders checks protections at the line, manipulates safeties with shoulder fakes, and has reduced turnover-worthy throws in full-speed sessions to single digits. Statistics normally cited for veteran backups, not rookies. The longer that evidence accumulates, the more Carter's comments appear rooted in legacy bias rather than objective performance review. None of this guarantees Sanders will open the season under center. Preseason defenses test quarterbacks in ways practice cannot. Defensive coordinators will disguise pressure and boundary rotation to force late decisions. Sanders must show he can adjust protections and exploit mismatches without the benefit of a controlled environment. Yet within the Browns facility, the conversation has shifted from if he will be ready to when. Quiet confidence from Amari Cooper and other veterans suggests they believe Sanders can steady an offense searching for consistency more than highlight reel heroics. Sanders' rise also affects long-term roster calculus. If he earns the job and performs competently, Cleveland gains starter-level production on a cost-controlled rookie contract, freeing cap space allocated to other positions. That scenario could reshape roster-building strategy in a division featuring Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson, quarterbacks whose contracts consume significant percentages of team payroll. A capable, low-cost starter would allow the Browns to reinforce their offensive line and secondary while retaining core veterans, a competitive advantage few teams enjoy. For now, the focal point remains daily improvement. Sanders continues to arrive before sunrise, reviewing the previous day's install with the quarterback coach, then staying after practice to throw on-air routes with receivers low on the depth chart. Coaches track those habits closely because consistent routine underpins performance when adversity strikes in live games. Each incremental gain strengthens the argument that readiness depends on preparation and aptitude, not draft slot. Carter's segment reminded the league how quickly assessments can become outdated when they lean on perception over evidence. Sanders' steady climb up the depth chart underscores the counterpoint. In the NFL, tape is the final arbiter. Should Sanders translate practice efficiency to preseason success, the Browns may discover that the solution to their long-standing quarterback riddle arrived quietly in the 5th round, carrying little more than confidence and a willingness to work.
Watson says he has been mentoring Shedeur Sanders at the quarterback position. The biggest failure in the NFL is now mentoring quarterbacks. The most overpaid underdeliverer at the position is now mentoring 2 rookie QBs and a Super Bowl champ. So what exactly are you mentoring him at? You have had 24 civil lawsuits that you paid off to go away. And when you play, you are as ass as those massage therapists are, apparently. Shedeur Sanders is also a show. It's all about him. It's all about anything else. If you don't see that by now, then you're just blinded.
Cleveland's second most talked about player has yet to take a professional snap, and it isn't Deshaun Watson. Rookie quarterback Shedeur Sanders has already captured the locker room's attention and the fan base's enthusiasm, creating a visible shift in the team's internal dynamics. Watson, once the uncontested focal point, now shares the spotlight with a newcomer who has only practiced in shorts. The Browns are experiencing a rapid, unforeseen change in popularity within their roster.
Four-man competition. It's not. It's 2 guys versus 2 guys. It's the 2 older guys to be the starter. Yeah. It's the 2 younger guys to position themselves however it may be. Right. Show little improvement every single day, right? So, of all the things I'm watching, I'm watching the first 5 when they break a session, the first 5 with the veterans, with the ones. Who's in there? Where are they going? The ball's going to Jerry Judy, right? Flacco's no dummy, lasts as long as he has, right? He can really whiz it. But as we go on, I want to watch these guys because they probably just got plays installed Tuesday, and they're out there running them Wednesday.
Shedeur Sanders arrived in Cleveland and immediately commanded attention. The rookie has yet to take a preseason snap, yet the energy around him inside the building and across social media eclipses what many veterans receive in an entire season. Fan enthusiasm is so strong that Deshaun Watson's jerseys are already drifting toward the clearance rack at the team store. In a matter of days, Sanders has become the roster's second most popular figure, while Watson watches his once secure QB1 status and public approval shrink by the hour.
Shedeur or Deshaun? Who do you want as your quarterback next year?
Honestly, Shedeur. I love Deshaun though. Like, I don't understand all the hate for Deshaun. You get hurt and you get booed, bro. That's foul. That might be the foulest I ever seen.
The Browns' social media staff posted a single candid photo of rookie quarterback Shedeur Sanders releasing a warm-up throw, and the response was immediate and overwhelming. Fans saturated timelines with edits of themselves alongside him, while Deshaun Watson's routine practice reps drew comparatively little notice. Although an official Sanders jersey has not been released, unauthorized versions are already moving at a pace that exceeds merchandise sales for several other AFC North teams. The surge in interest marks one of the most intense fan reactions Cleveland has experienced in recent memory. The excitement surrounding Shedeur also triggers a wave of criticism. Veteran analysts, anchored in a 1980s mindset, question whether his style will translate into lasting success. They focus on his NIL earnings, social media presence, and visible confidence, arguing that the image overshadows substance. To them, outward self-assurance appears to be a distraction rather than a competitive asset. Even a simple smile or brief display of personality is cited as evidence that he lacks the measured discipline they expect from a starting quarterback. Critics claim Shedeur Sanders is notable only because of his father overlooking the performance he delivered at Colorado. Many of those same observers ignored the Buffaloes until Deion Sanders made national headlines, yet they now question whether his son has earned the attention. They want rookies to keep quiet, carry clipboards, and wait 2 seasons before challenging for a starting role. Sanders is disregarding that script from the moment he arrived. His presence has already turned Cleveland's quarterback discussion into a genuine 2-man competition before a single preseason snap. Deshaun Watson maintains publicly that the situation does not concern him, but it is hard to believe the pressure is not real. A fully guaranteed contract protects his paycheck, not his standing in the locker room. Sanders, meanwhile, is translating charisma and early momentum into tangible influence with teammates, coaches, and fans, reshaping expectations for who will lead the Browns on opening day.
I'm a firm believer. If I wanted Shedeur Sanders at 2, at worst at 33, of course I already think that he's better than other quarterbacks. Because that's the type of talent, that's where I would have picked him at. And if he was at 2 or 33, and he still had the same exact skill set, we will be talking about him starting and playing.
Right. Well, there'd only be 3 quarterbacks.
It'll be 3 quarterbacks, not 4.
Not 4, yeah.
But since he moved to the 5th round, that's cool. They might have to go along with it. But to me, I think if you ask who got the best tools, I'm going with Shedeur.
Shedeur Sanders has not taken a single professional snap, yet discussion about him has split NFL social media into 2 camps. One side already argues he should start immediately. The other worries about what that means for veteran quarterbacks like Deshaun Watson. Reporters now line the perimeter of Browns camp, scrutinizing every inconsistency in Watson's spiral and every precise throw from Sanders during drills. Each well-placed pass is clipped, posted to TikTok, and captioned as evidence of a future QB1. Cleveland is no stranger to quarterback drama, but this situation is different. Rather than cycling through another unproven starter, the franchise is dealing with a rookie who entered with more polish, public attention, and perceived readiness than most first-year players. Fans chant Sanders' name before he has appeared in a preseason game, while the established starter works to maintain his relevance. The atmosphere is not yet a full controversy, it is a countdown. Traditional analysts insist on the importance of experience and respecting the process, yet Sanders is progressing on the timeline set by the supporters who already view him as the next leader of the offense. The 2025 NFL Draft was expected to be Shedeur Sanders' moment. Many projected him as a top 10 talent and a headline quarterback in one of the most discussed college football storylines in years. Instead of walking across the stage on the first night, he waited through 3 days without a call. There was no celebration, only silence. When the phone finally rang at pick 144 in the 5th round, it was the Cleveland Browns. With that selection, the financial outlook changed dramatically. The Sanders family believes this was not a typical draft slide, but the result of coordinated action. They are pursuing a $100 million lawsuit alleging collusion across parts of the league. In the months before the draft, Sanders was consistently discussed among the top quarterbacks in the class. Television and digital analysts praised his poise, accuracy, leadership, and command. Scouts highlighted a 74.1% completion rate, record-setting stretches at Colorado, and his rise from an HBCU star to a national figure. Consensus expectations placed him in the first round or early second. Draft night unfolded differently. As picks accumulated, there was little indication that his name would be called. The atmosphere at his private gathering shifted from anticipation to doubt. When the Browns selected him late on day 3, projections for his first contract dropped from an estimated range in the mid-$30 million to approximately $4.6 million, with corresponding reductions in likely endorsements and long-term positioning. According to Deion Sanders and others close to the family, this was not about performance, injury, or conduct. They argue it was coordinated. Attorneys were contacted immediately. The allegation is straightforward. Sanders' value was suppressed intentionally. The family's position is that this was a calculated decision within parts of the league, not an isolated set of evaluations. The legal claims focus on communications that, if authenticated, could be significant. Internal emails, text messages, and owner-to-owner conversations. The family's representatives contend that these materials show a deliberate effort to avoid drafting Sanders in early rounds based on perceived image concerns rather than football merit. One message reportedly under review framed the decision in branding terms. Drafting Shedeur would mean inheriting the Prime brand. The complaint asserts that this view led some teams to discourage others from selecting him unless necessary, not for film-based reasons, but to avoid perceived attention and external pressure tied to his family's profile. A related thread involves speculation about team fit and willingness to play for certain franchises. Past public comments by Deion Sanders were interpreted by some as signals of an Eli Manning scenario. The family's view is that these were strategic statements, not ultimatums. They argue that rather than engage in discussion, teams chose a passive approach, no direct rebuttal, reduced contact, and a collective reluctance to invest a premium pick. If phone records and written communications corroborate coordination, these items could become central exhibits. Media tone shifted as the draft neared. Coverage that had emphasized production and leadership began highlighting intangibles, interviews, and perceived coachability. Anonymous sourcing appeared in multiple outlets, with claims that Sanders skipped combine drills out of arrogance, bristled at film critique, or told one club, "Maybe I'm not the guy for you," after a tense session. A widely cited line, "Nobody wants a celebrity backup quarterback," was voiced by Colin Cowherd and circulated as shorthand for risk. The Sanders legal position is that these narratives did not arise organically, but reflected a coordinated leak pattern that undermined his market value. The family's contention is that this was primarily about control and compliance rather than football ability. They point out that Sanders did not fail a drug test, was not suspended, and did not produce poor athletic testing. His college resume included elite stretches and significant program elevation at 2 stops. The legal claim asserts that the league's power structure resisted a high-profile player aligned with a high-profile parent coach and an independent media presence. The allegation is that teams sought to avoid the perceived complexity that would come with selecting him early. The financial impact is a core component of the damages claim. Had Sanders been selected late first or early second round, projected 4-year compensation would likely have fallen between $30 to $35 million, with immediate access to higher tier endorsement opportunities and the brand leverage that accompanies a franchise quarterback designation. As a 5th round pick, the initial contract value is a fraction of that total, and associated off-field opportunities are typically narrower. The suit reportedly seeks not only lost salary, but also the broader economic value linked to draft position, sponsorships, licensing, and the visibility that accelerates an early career trajectory. The filing's scope, as described by sources close to the family, extends beyond the league office. It may involve media outlets, scouting firms, and specific executives if discovery shows coordination or materially false statements that affected value. The argument is that the draft slide harmed not only Shedeur, but also the broader Sanders brand, affecting perceptions of Deion Sanders as a recruiter, coach, and public figure. The family's view is that narrative construction around brand risk and celebrity backup produced a measurable economic and reputational loss. If a court authorizes discovery, the process would likely compel emails, internal draft notes, and message archives from teams and third-party intermediaries. Subpoenas could be served on media organizations for sourcing records related to anonymous quotes. That level of transparency would be unusual and could reveal how information flows during pre-draft periods. The legal theory moves beyond a single player's evaluation to the draft's integrity, whether owners or executives acted in concert to reduce a prospect's value for reasons unrelated to football performance. The league has not publicly addressed these specific allegations. Background comments from executives characterize the claims as overreach. The family's camp maintains they have documentation sufficient to proceed. The comparison points referenced by observers include Deflategate, Spygate, and the Colin Kaepernick grievance, not because the facts are the same, but because of the potential scope, policies, practices, and the balance of power between the league and individuals challenging its processes. Another dimension of the dispute involves how the NFL perceives Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, and the autonomy he promotes. He built a large media footprint around his programs at Jackson State and Colorado, elevated his players' profiles, and spoke openly about fit and leverage. The family contends that this visibility, combined with statements about preferred destinations, triggered resistance. The complaint frames the response as a preference for compliance and predictability over independent branding and public negotiation. The suit also addresses the pre-draft decisions that critics point to: skipping the Senior Bowl, declining full workouts at the NFL Scouting Combine, and candid interviews about team fits. The family characterizes these as strategic choices commonly made by top prospects, not evidence of entitlement. Their view is that similar decisions by other players did not produce the same narrative because those players fit more comfortably within league expectations. The risk calculus is clear. Bringing a suit of this magnitude invites professional consequences. The family acknowledges that some within the league may react negatively. Their position is that the principle at stake, transparent and fair valuation, warrants the risk. The message they intend to send is that manufactured narratives and coordinated devaluation should face scrutiny, particularly when they affect earnings, opportunity, and reputation. If the case advances, several outcomes are possible. The court could find insufficient evidence of coordination, limiting the scope to individual judgments protected as opinion. It could also find enough to proceed to broader discovery, which would have implications beyond one player, including potential changes to how teams document evaluations and how media handle anonymous sourcing close to the draft. Agents might push for reforms, including clearer guardrails around leaks and standardized prospect communication records. For now, Sanders is working within the Brown structure. He has avoided public escalation beyond confirming focus on preparation and development. The lawsuit is a separate track managed by counsel. This dual approach, professional routine on the field and legal action off it, reflects the family's strategy. They intend to contest the process they believe harmed him while meeting club expectations day to day. The core allegations remain consistent across their statements. A talented quarterback saw his draft value suppressed by coordinated behavior tied to branding concerns and public positioning rather than football merit. Media narratives amplified that shift, and the result was a substantial, quantifiable loss. The remedy sought includes compensation and a measure of accountability that could deter similar conduct. Whether the claims are ultimately proven will depend on documentation and testimony. If emails, texts, and call logs substantiate coordination, the impact could be significant, prompting policy review around pre-draft communications and media engagement. If not, the case may narrow to disputes over opinion, perception, and the gray areas of scouting. Either way, the filing signals a willingness to confront entrenched practices and to test in court how far the process extends beyond film and interviews. This situation has moved from speculation to litigation. It addresses control, image, and power in a system that influences careers and compensation. It also underscores how public narratives can shape market outcomes. Sanders' path now has two tracks: earning opportunities on the field in Cleveland and seeking redress off the field for what the family views as an avoidable and orchestrated loss. The questions at stake are larger than one draft slot. They touch on how the league values independence, how information is weaponized, and what recourse exists when a player believes the evaluation moved from football to optics. The answers will emerge through practice reps and, potentially, through discovery and a courtroom record.
I view things as I got time. I got time to be able to grow and mature, and be able to understand the ins and outs of the defenses and be able to get the good insight from the vets in the room. So I look at it as, a plus. And whenever, it's time for me to play.
Shedeur Sanders rolled into Brown's camp and instantly made the whole practice feel like a recess pickup game. NFL vets suddenly looked like they'd forgotten the playbook and were just trying to keep up.
With that being said, I see some balls coming out of Shedeur Sanders at that camp, and I'm like, kind of looks like a guy.
Yeah, I'm reading.
He can sling it.
Read the teeth. I see him, some of the veterans, how they talk to him, mic'd up, see what he's doing in the community.
Talking about Njoku there?
Njoku, like that. But once you see, different little interactions and things like that, we know I know he has the talent. We'll see. It'll be a competition that usually brings the best out of guys, especially young guys. So I'm interested to see how that quarterback situation.
Right after Shedeur Sanders tightened his cleats and the Browns settled in for what they figured was a routine camp day, the whole vibe tilted sideways. No blazing comet, no UFO touching down at midfield, just a swagger-charged quarterback striding in like he'd crashed the wrong league and thought, yeah, I'll stick around and run this show. The Browns had no clue what storm was rolling in. You'd expect an NFL team to do a quick scout, maybe pull up a highlight reel or two, but nope. They greeted Shedeur with a shrug, only to watch him seize the field on snap one and run the whole operation like a seasoned pro.
First and foremost, he's been the best quarterback in camp. Now look, Joe Flacco ain't had many opportunities. There was a whole day I saw he didn't throw the ball at all. Here's my theory on the situation. They already know who's starting in the number 2 is. They already know. Joe Flacco and Shedeur Sanders is already locked up. You're missing the boat, people. You're missing the boat. Your boy, Kenny Pickett and Dylan Gabriel, oh, they're fighting.
Shedeur didn't merely clock in, he hijacked the session. One moment he's loosening his arm, the next he's roasting veteran QBs like faded names on busted draft boards. Defensive coordinators everywhere had the same gut punch reaction. Uh-oh. His pocket poise? Straight disrespectful. His timing? Psychic. And every pass left his hand like it was laser guided to its mark. While Shedeur Sanders was slicing up routes, the Browns secondary looked less like an NFL backfield and more like a gaggle of dads sprinting through a Saturday fun run. Big on enthusiasm, short on closing speed. Coaches fought the urge to slam the emergency horn. Players traded wide-eyed, "Are we serious?" stares, and someone even double-checked that a hidden camera crew wasn't about to pop out of the tunnel. But nope, this was pure Shedeur. Half cold-blooded surgeon, half highlight factory. He wasn't dropping a casual "I'm here," he was crafting a masterclass. From the first rep, the tempo changed. Shedeur Sanders accepted the snap with steady footwork, diagnosed the Browns' single high shell, and delivered a tight window seam route that forced the free safety to recover late. Throughout the period, he manipulated leverage with quick shoulder fakes, moved through full field progressions, and released on time from a balanced base, consistently putting the ball on his receiver's upfield shoulder. Cleveland's coverage struggled on multiple fronts. Safeties hesitated between deep half responsibilities and underneath support, creating voids at 15 to 20 yards. Cornerbacks and off-man were caught in trail position when Sanders used rhythm throws on 3-step drops, while those who tried press technique had their inside hand neutralized by his receivers' outside releases. Linebackers widened to match shallow crossers, leaving the middle hook unguarded for pivot routes and option digs. One corner attempted a line of scrimmage jam. Sanders immediately adjusted the route to a back shoulder fade, releasing the ball before the break and rendering the press ineffective. Over the session, he showcased pocket discipline, reclimbing to maintain throwing lanes rather than drifting, and finished with a series of anticipatory throws against cover 2 cloud, fitting vertical outs between the flat and deep half defenders. Sanders' combination of rapid post-snap processing, precise ball placement, and pocket efficiency exposed coverage mismatches at every level and highlighted communication gaps in the Browns Browns secondary. By mid-session, the Browns defensive staff clearly recognized their calls were outmatched. Every adjustment, a roll to cover 6, a simulated pressure, a late rotate to too high, was neutralized once Shedeur Sanders confirmed the post-snap picture. Routes that had taken weeks to script were beaten by timing and location. Comeback set at 12 yards broke open before the corner's transition. Slot seam-outs dotted the void between the flat and deep half defender, and boundary receivers beat press with quick hand techniques, receiving the ball before the trail man could recover. Sanders' command was methodical. He used cadence to freeze plug blitzes, re-ID'd the mic when linebackers sugared the A-gaps, and maintained a firm base so he could reset and fire without resetting his feet. His receivers benefited from that rhythm. Top of the stem, eyes back. Ball delivered on their upfield shoulder, allowing immediate transition to YAC. The Browns front tried a late stunt to compress the pocket. Sanders climbed 2 steps, re-spotted the shallow crosser, and delivered in stride, turning a potential sack into a 20-yard gain. What stood out most was how little ramp-up Sanders needed. From his first series, he processed full field concepts at tempo, cycling through progression reads without hitching. The poise under interior pressure, consistency in ball placement, and ability to manipulate zone defenders left the Browns' coordinated disguise packages ineffective and forced them into static coverage by the end of the period. In short, Sanders' efficient mechanics, rapid processing, and anticipatory accuracy rendered Cleveland's defensive game plan ineffective at every level, from pre-snap disguise to post-snap spacing.
Imagine there's many people that think Dylan Gabriel's a better quarterback than Shedeur Sanders. I don't care where they were drafted. And if the Browns are the one team that thinks that, then I'm going to suspect it's not true. They don't know what
listen,
they're
I
doing.
have every quarterback evaluation for 30 years.
Right.
I never root against anybody.
Yeah.
But I'd be surprised if Dylan Gabriel's ever a legitimate starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. I- I'd be surprised. I just don't think.
Well, then it is a wasted pick because you took him in the top 100.
Yeah, but potentially.
Yeah.
May get away with it because of Shedeur.
An edge rusher chirped at Shedeur Sanders between snaps, hoping to shake his rhythm. On the very next play, Sanders answered with a 30-yard laser, a deep dig from the boundary side that split the single high safety and the trailing corner. He hit the top of a 5-step drop, kept a firm base, and delivered on time to the receiver's outside shoulder, turning what should have been a routine rep into a sudden change explosive. From that moment on, every coverage wrinkle the Browns tried, rotating from cover 3 to quarter half, flashing a Tampa 2 shell, mugging both A-gaps, was met with a precise counter. When corners pressed, Sanders adjusted the route to a back shoulder fade. When safeties widened, he checked to a glance post. When linebackers bailed, he found the running back on a delayed option out of the backfield. Even late simulated pressures couldn't move him off his spot. He simply climbed, reset his feet, and fired. As Cleveland's defenders rotated through checks, Sanders manipulated them with cadence and eye discipline. He froze weak side safeties long enough to create intermediate windows, then feathered the ball into those lanes before help could arrive. When the Browns finally dropped 7 and matched every route, Sanders tucked the ball and converted 2 separate 3rd and 6 situations on the ground, reminding everyone that his mobility is as calculated as his arm. By the end of the session, the defensive coordinator's call sheet looked obsolete. Sanders had neutralized blitz looks, exposed spacing issues in zone, and forced the unit into static base coverage just to survive the period. It wasn't a camp drill anymore. It was a clinic on timing, processing speed, and controlled aggression, delivered snap after snap by a quarterback who never needed a warm-up lap to own the field.
They never planned on taking him. The problem is, like Ocho Cinco said, you got somebody that has endeared himself to the locker room. And guess what? The difference between him and Tim Tebow, the biggest one, is he can play. He can throw the ball. Tim Tebow running around being an H-back. He can throw the ball. And he's done everything he needs to do. He ain't saying nothing. He ain't rocking the boat. He ain't mad about the reps. He ain't mad about none of that. All the people out there want to see is this, like Tyler said earlier. We want to see what he can do with Jerry Jeudy.
That's it.
I want to see what he can do with David Njoku. I want to see him with Junkins. I want to see him with the first running backs. If you are cooking, if you are beating down the doors with the 3s and 4s, guess what? You deserve more.
From the first team period on, Cleveland's secondary looked a step slow. A deep third safety hesitated on a post-snap rotation, leaving Shedeur Sanders free to climb the pocket and fire a 22-yard out that arrived before the defender could plant and drive. The supporting cast around him, players fighting for roster spots, not Pro Bowl invites, benefited from his command. Sanders used tempo to control the defensive front, altered protections at the line, and located throwing lanes so quickly that one receiver didn't register the catch until he crossed the goal line. As the Browns tried new personnel groups, coverage busts multiplied. Starters slipped out for hamstring stretches while rookies rotated in, only to find the ball arriving on their blind side before they'd completed a midpoint squeeze. On a later 3rd and long, Cleveland finally closed the interior rush lanes, compressing the pocket with 3 defenders. Sanders pivoted through the traffic, stepped into a narrow escape window, and, without resetting his shoulders, whipped a no-look pass to the boundary curl for a fresh set of downs. The throw turned a potential sack into an explosive play and left the coaching staff scrambling for answers.
The people who are fascinated by Shedeur for whatever reason, whether it's his play, I guess, last year was kind of fun. If you're just like a guy who grew up like loving Deion Sanders and passed that love on down to your kids, I can see why you're like that. The one thing I will give them is you're looking at this quarterback room. If you're a fan of Shedeur and say, why can't he go beat Dylan Gabriel or Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett? So I do understand that part of it, right? Because why not? Why couldn't he be the Brown starter in October or November?
That looks like a quarterback room where everyone will get a chance to start.
You made an interesting point. So I tend to have the drip, drip, drip. This was my Johnny Manziel theory, is that everybody makes mistakes, especially when you're young. But if I see 2, 3, 4, 5, then you've got a plumbing issue. It's not just you didn't close the faucet. So there's about 6 pieces of video in college where Shedeur was a little bit of a brat. Whatever. Then there's the legendary cringy draft room. Didn't love that as a B prospect. Then there's back-to-back speeding tickets, both over 90, and a missed arraignment.
The NFL is navigating unexpected headlines after a former Browns coach publicly defended Shedeur Sanders in response to reports of multiple speeding tickets. The coach's statement has sparked extensive online debate. Supporters welcome the show of loyalty, while critics question the motive. Sanders now finds himself at the center of an unforeseen controversy, and observers want to know why a Cleveland coach is standing so firmly in his corner. The story is developing rapidly and continues to draw intense attention.
When it came out that he got a speeding ticket, I said it's not really that big a deal. I feel very differently about it now. Over 40 miles an hour over the speed limit, less than 2 weeks after you just got a ticket. I don't know if that's entitlement or immaturity. There's got to be some teams that are feeling very good right now that they didn't draft him.
Observers are focusing on Shedeur Sanders' recent speeding ticket, treating the violation as a measure of his character and sidelining his athletic, academic, and philanthropic accomplishments. The incident, driving 15 miles per hour over the limit in a borrowed Lamborghini, has drawn sharp criticism. In response, a former Cleveland Browns coach has taken the opportunity to comment, even though the franchise is widely viewed as unstable due to its frequent coaching changes and limited on-field success. By defending Sanders, he presents himself as an authority on discipline and leadership. The statement, coming from an organization seldom praised for stability, has nonetheless attracted considerable attention across the league.
You want to defend him a little bit. I thought this was an interesting take.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting that you said you were out because of the speeding tickets. To me, that's such a minor thing. You were so high on him in terms of his completion percentage in OTAs, and I thought that was a little aggressive on your part. But with the speeding tickets, I got a speeding ticket the first night of the draft, my first year there. I thought maybe I'd get the benefit of the doubt, but they gave it to me anyways.
As soon as the former Browns coach defended Shedeur Sanders, social media erupted with commentary, resembling the volume of draft night coverage. Posts and opinions appeared within minutes, and criticism escalated rapidly. Detractors amplified Sanders' minor speeding violation, while supporters argued that such reactions were disproportionate to a single traffic citation. Shedeur Sanders received 2 speeding citations, and the minor traffic issue quickly drew national attention. Before considering the former former Browns coach's response, it is useful to clarify the facts. Sanders, son of Pro Football Hall of Famer Deion Sanders and a current college quarterback, was twice ticketed for exceeding the limit while driving a high-performance vehicle. Commentary on social media escalated rapidly, with critics framing the incident as a significant character concern, even as the league has historically tolerated far more serious legal transgressions. Stepping into the debate, a former Cleveland Browns coach, best known for a tenure filled with losses and contested decisions, issued a strong public defense. He argued that 2 speeding tickets should not define Sanders' reputation or overshadow his on-field talent and community work, urging a balanced assessment of the player's actions.
I don't love it from a 5th-round draft pick. I don't love that it happened multiple times. But I do think that this is the first time he's been away from his dad. And, you know, there's going to be some growing pains. Now, would I sell my stock on it like you are? Not because of a couple speeding tickets, especially in light of the problems that Brown's quarterback room has had to deal with legally in the last few years. I mean, this is nothing.
The debate quickly shifted from 2 speeding citations to broader claims about integrity, growth, and leadership. The former Browns coach framed the infractions as moments for personal development and urged observers to view them in context. Critics responded forcefully. Some called for disciplinary action, others questioned Deion Sanders' parenting, and a few sought to discredit the coach himself, despite his professional record already being widely analyzed across the league. The reaction underscores an apparent inconsistency in public standards. Fans often overlook on-field confrontations, heated sideline arguments, and other significant controversies, yet they treated Sanders' as routine traffic offenses, speeding without evidence of reckless endangerment, as indicators of serious character flaws. If such minor violations were adopted as the primary measure of morality in professional football, many players would face similar criticism. Sports media amplified the story almost immediately. Television panels dissected Shedeur Sanders' decision-making, treating 2 speeding tickets as indicators of deeper character concerns. Networks aired detailed segments under banners such as red flags and road rage, repeatedly questioning whether the citations might affect his draft evaluation. Although Sanders is already regarded as a first-round prospect, analysts emphasize that NFL teams value discipline and legal awareness when forming final assessments. Many commentators overlook the fact that other high-profile players have faced more serious offenses without similar scrutiny. Throughout the coverage, the former Browns coach defended Sanders, portraying him as a talented quarterback subjected to disproportionate criticism in a culture that expects near-perfect conduct. His argument was thorough and methodical, asserting that the traffic violation should not overshadow Sanders' skills, work ethic, or future potential. Commentators point out that the coach's intervention was not entirely selfless. He recognized the publicity potential. One day he was an overlooked figure from a struggling Browns era, the next he was a trending name across sports media. The discussion quickly expanded beyond Sanders' speeding citations to questions of image management and narrative control. Critics demanded disciplinary measures, public apologies, team sanctions, and formal statements, yet their objections seemed directed less at the traffic infractions themselves and more at Sanders' high profile, confidence, and resistance to traditional expectations. In practical terms, Sanders' brand remains intact. The coach secures renewed relevance, and the episode supplies another headline in the ongoing story of modern football. The next time Sanders is seen in a high-performance car, the debate will likely reignite, focused not on speed limits, but on the broader culture of the league. Meanwhile, new voices continue to join the conversation. Broadcaster Colin Cowherd has already weighed in, offering his own reassessment of the incident and its broader implications.
Breaking news, Shedeur Sanders last night was pulled over going 100 miles per hour. All right, he clocked 101, 41 miles an hour over the speed limit in Cleveland. He will have the opportunity to fight the ticket in court. Now, I'm not exactly sure where he was pulled over, whether or not that it was in Ohio or whether or not that it was in his home state. But typically when you're going 40 over, that's flirting with the line of reckless driving. Folks, I gotta tell you, I don't understand what it is with these young men driving at absurd speed.
Colin Cowherd's view of Shedeur Sanders shifted abruptly. Days after praising the quarterback's poise and skill, he appeared on air to declare that Sanders is overhyped, unfocused, and distracted by celebrity. The reversal was immediate, without any gradual reconsideration. Cowherd now frames Sanders' 2 speeding tickets as evidence of poor judgment, even though he has defended other quarterbacks facing far more serious off-field issues. The sudden, wholesale withdrawal of support leaves viewers questioning the consistency of Cowherd's criteria and illustrates how quickly media narratives can change when minor incidents receive outsized attention.
This is
okay.
nothing.
Okay. The how much of this is I mean, Jimmy Haslam has his hands all over Manziel, has his hands all over Deshaun Watson, admitted it, man enough to admit it. I saw the reaction in the draft room when they took Shedeur Sanders. It's pretty obvious it wasn't the coach and the GM's pick. How much is this team has 8 last place finishes in 13 years owning it. How much of this is we don't have a very good owner here like Washington, D.C. and the Commanders?
Yeah, I didn't love the owner stepping in and saying, hey, you got to take this guy in the 5th round. And I doubt they'll ever admit to it.
While Colin Cowherd urged teams to move on from Shedeur Sanders, former Browns coach Eric Mangini offered a more measured response. Mangini, whose tenure in Cleveland was marked by mixed results, used his platform to provide context rather than condemnation. Instead of sensationalizing the speeding violations, he encouraged viewers to consider Sanders' circumstances. A 21-year-old quarterback whose life is scrutinized both on and off the field. Mangini acknowledged that the tickets were mistakes, but emphasized that they do not by themselves define Sanders' character or future. He noted the extraordinary attention athletes received today, combining the responsibilities of quarterback, public figure, and social media presence. Under such pressure, missteps are magnified, and criticism multiplies quickly. Mangini concluded that any evaluation of Sanders should weigh the totality of his behavior, performance, and growth, rather than isolate 2 traffic citations as decisive evidence of poor judgment.
You can't fire the owner because he can't fire himself. Yeah, someone's head's going to roll, unfortunately, in this situation, and it's probably Stefanski and Barry.
I saw on The Athletic.
I don't think that's fair, by the way. Stefanski, that part.
I agree. I was saying the other day on my podcast that Barry should be fired, and I said I wouldn't fire Stefanski, but a couple of people made the point of saying, well, if you fire the GM, you got to give him a chance to hire his own coach, which is fair.
That's true.
So I would fire Barry. I would hire a new GM. If that GM thinks Kevin Stefanski's a good coach, wants to stick with him.
The situation in Cleveland has escalated with the NFL. Sources indicate GM Andrew Barry is prepared to move on from head coach Kevin Stefanski if he refuses to elevate Shedeur Sanders. The Browns are weighing a major quarterback change. Leadership appears to be aligning behind Sanders and pushing for immediate action. This is a high-stakes decision about control and the team's direction.
I think it's unfair for me to comment in I guess, maybe on behalf of the industry. All I can say is this, the time that we spent with Shedeur, and what he's done throughout his college career is impressive. He's an impressive young man. He's a really good quarterback. Sometimes, fit comes into play. And I'd also say this, there are 4 more rounds of the draft. And then maybe lastly, it's less about where you get picked and what you do after you get picked. That's really the most important thing. Getting to know him over the course of the spring, he has a ton of resolve.
Andrew Barry appears to be at a breaking point. Pressure from fans and within the organization to play Shedeur Sanders is intensifying. Barry is pushing for a move towards Sanders, while head coach Kevin Stefanski remains cautious about altering the depth chart. The divide is clear. One side wants acceleration, the other a measured rollout. The organization is under heavy scrutiny, and the focus has shifted to when, not if, Sanders sees the field.
Has the 4th highest odds of any head coach this season to be fired. He's clearly on the hot seat. It's been a discussion for really a couple years now, dating back to last season's 3-win season. And he's always had kind of hot and cold seasons. And now the sports books are saying he's 4th on the list. Number 1 is Mike McDaniel of the Miami Dolphins, Brian Dable of the Giants at 2, Shane Steichen at 3, and there is Kevin Stefanski plus 650 to be fired.
This has moved beyond tension to outright stubbornness. Rather than elevating Shedeur Sanders, the staff has chosen Dillon Gabriel. The current depth chart looks less like a forward plan and more like resistance to change. Fans have been clear about who they expect to see, yet the organization keeps delaying. Every week without a real evaluation of Sanders slows development and blurs accountability. Cleveland is choosing a conservative approach when a decisive decision is needed, sending a message of uncertainty to both the locker room and the city.
Now being the 3rd-string quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, was that so much was made out of unbelievable. He actually made the team as the 3rd-string quarterback. Like that was a big deal. Like that was somewhat of a surprise to a lot of people. He should have been the first pick in the draft.
Kevin Stefanski appears to be doubling down to validate his approach. Despite sustained demand from Browns fans to see Shedeur Sanders reflected in chants, merchandise, and constant discussion, he continues to keep Dillon Gabriel in front on the depth chart. The decision functions as an assertion of control rather than a response to momentum. Even with clear signals from the fan base, Stefanski is staying with Gabriel and delaying a full evaluation of Sanders. It is a deliberate choice to maintain his plan and pacing, not to accelerate change. Cleveland is prioritizing continuity over recalibration, keeping any transition to Sanders on hold.
But yeah, I mean, the Browns are in a tough spot. They have wasted. You traded a ton of high draft capital to get Deshaun Watson. You've gotten nothing out of Deshaun Watson and missed an opportunity. Like, who knows who they would have drafted? Now, maybe they would have screwed up those picks and the Browns would still be in bad shape.
Andrew Berry is likely frustrated watching Dillon Gabriel default to conservative throws while the offense stalls. From a football perspective, this appears to be the hill Kevin Stefanski is choosing to stand on. Keeping Gabriel ahead of Shedeur Sanders has limited the unit's explosiveness and prevented a full evaluation of a higher ceiling option. Drives end quickly, field position flips, and momentum is lost while Sanders remains on the sideline. Fan patience is wearing thin. Each ineffective series intensifies criticism and shifts scrutiny toward the coaching staff's criteria for the depth chart. With every additional snap for Gabriel, the decision reads less like an open competition and more like rigid adherence to a plan that isn't producing results. The optics are clear. A dynamic quarterback sits while a cautious approach keeps the offense in neutral. If this continues, accountability questions will grow inside and outside the building. What performance benchmarks keep Gabriel ahead of Sanders? When will Sanders receive first-team reps in live situations to allow a fair comparison? The front office must decide whether to preserve continuity or pivot toward a timely assessment of Sanders. The longer the current approach stays in place, the more it signals stubbornness rather than adaptation, and the more pressure mounts to realign the plan with on-field output.
I honestly see it happening if the Browns lose a bunch of games. Like if they get 5 wins or less, I see the report coming out now that Stefanski will be fired. I don't want it to happen. I want the Browns to be good, win a bunch of games. I think that they're going to be a team that is slept on and can at least get 7 wins, which is why if they don't, I see Stefanski getting all the blame for that, and there'll be a new coach in Cleveland. Because their players, to me, are there once again. We've talked about the incredible rookie class.
The approach in Cleveland lacks consistency. One week, Andrew Berry signals he wants Shedeur Sanders on the field. The next, Dillon Gabriel gets the reps and the plan stays conservative. Through it all, Kevin Stefanski shows limited urgency despite pressure on his job security. Fans are asking for an offense that can push the ball, change field position, and produce points. Instead, the unit leans on short throws and cautious sequencing. Gabriel's play keeps the ceiling low and momentum static, while a full evaluation of Sanders is postponed. The result is growing frustration and a clear disconnect between the front office, coaching staff, and expectations in the stadium.
The NFL tried to teach him and his father a lesson. You don't act like that. You don't talk like that before a draft. We'll show you how our game is played. We will watch you plummet all the way. I think he would have gone undrafted except for that owner in Cleveland. And he is the key to everything because he is something of an against-the-grain maverick owner. He's kind of a wannabe Jerry.
Fan speculation is growing. Some believe Kevin Stefanski lacks confidence in Shedeur Sanders. Others think he's prioritizing Dillon Gabriel for reasons unrelated to performance. A more extreme view claims Stefanski is manipulating outcomes to secure a buyout. Whatever the motive, the risk is clear. This approach is straining his relationship with GM Andrew Berry and alienating the fan base. Pressure is rising, Berry's patience is running out, and supporters have shifted from requests to demands. If the current plan continues, calls for a change in quarterback and accountability will intensify.
I think, honestly, guys notice it more when you aren't winning games, right? If Cleveland starts off in a bad start, they're not doing well, and all of a sudden Shedeur or Dillon Gabriel are doing well in 7-on-7. They're throwing dimes. In practice drills, the number one defense can't stop them. People take notice of that, and the more that the players see it, they're gonna. Then the comments start happening over the lunch table. They start happening throughout the building, and that's when the pressure really will get severe.
The Cleveland Browns were focused on resolving their quarterback situation until Jason Kelce made pointed comments that triggered a strong reaction from ownership. The response inside the organization was immediate and intense. What exactly did Kelce say that has the dog pound on edge and the front office under pressure?
We seen that miserable game by the Cleveland Browns. So they throw Joe Flacco in there, and I like Joe Flacco. He did good, but they gave him the resource of all the first team guys. Then they throw Dillon Gabriel in there with first teams and second teams. So Dillon always is getting protected. The same thing again, they gave this scrub max protection on every play. Yeah, he completed some passes, but let's talk about his mistakes. He's still inconsistent with his throws, but he at least had max protection.
The Cleveland Browns continue to be defined by inconsistency and avoidable setbacks. Even as fans hoped the organization had turned a corner, Jason Kelce, fresh off retirement, offered a direct critique that reignited doubts about the team's direction. His remarks implied the franchise's structure and decision-making remain unstable and recent progress may not hold. The takeaway for leadership is straightforward. Identify core issues, align on a coherent plan, and execute with discipline. For supporters, it's another sign that the problems run deeper than a single season.
They throw Shedeur Sanders in there with the lowest cab drivers you couldn't even get on 5th Street. And I'm pissed off, bro, because the play calling was abysmal. Look, even if you don't like Shedeur didn't even get a chance to be trash. Even if you think Shedeur is garbage, he didn't even get a chance to be garbage. That's how awful the offensive line was. Kevin Stefanski still doesn't want to give Shedeur second strings and first strings reps. Why is that?
Browns ownership's response shifted from measured to urgent. The pattern is familiar in Cleveland. The team once treated Johnny Manziel as a franchise solution, retained Hugh Jackson for a second year despite results, and invested heavily in Deshaun Watson through a costly trade and contract. These decisions reflect aggressive but poorly aligned planning. The outcome has been continued instability instead of sustained progress.
That this was the guy that they wanted to start. He's seasoned, he's experienced, he still has a big-time arm, even at his age, and they open with the Cincinnati Bengals. They wanted that experienced guy. He was always going to be the guy. They were not going to start Dillon Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders in week 1. Kenny Pickett had a hamstring injury. It makes it easy to go with Joe Flacco. And the question isn't and wasn't going to be who's the starter in Cleveland. The question is, who's going to be the backup in Cleveland? Who's going to be the number 2 quarterback when they open the season against these Bengals?
Fans still show up season after season, expecting improvement and bracing for setbacks. The usual pattern has been early optimism followed by a gradual collapse. But last season was different. For a sustained stretch, the Browns looked organized and competitive, resembling a functioning team.
Couple days, 3 days until roster cutdowns, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like you belong here on this team?
Obviously, I think overall as a player, I feel like I put in the work. I feel like everything I do, I try to do it to my best, and that's all I ask for. So I feel like everybody feels like, they should be on the team, and if you ask anybody on the team, would they feel like they belong, in their own eyes. So I feel like I do, but I'm my own player, I think about myself in a high regard.
The front office entered the offseason confident. Kevin Stefanski was being praised, and the Dog Pound believed the team had made real progress. Then Jason Kelce delivered a pointed assessment that cut through the optimism. Fresh into retirement, the former Eagles All-Pro and Super Bowl champion said Cleveland still looks like a team patching over issues rather than building a durable contender. Kelce's view was direct. The Browns' structure is fragile, and the roster is too dependent on perfect health at quarterback. He argued the team is one injury away from losing continuity and sliding backward. Because Kelce has operated inside a stable, championship-level organization, his comments carried weight with players, media, and fans. The reaction was immediate. People took his critique seriously, not as outside noise, but as an informed evaluation of how a successful team should be built. Ownership also felt the impact. Jimmy Haslam's response shifted to urgency, a sign that leadership recognizes the stakes. The criticism arrives in the context of prior high-risk decisions, especially the fully guaranteed $230 million commitment tied to Deshaun Watson. Watson has missed time and shown inconsistency when available, and the contract has constrained flexibility. Kelce's remarks highlight why depth, alignment between the front office and coaching staff, and a clear contingency plan at quarterback are non-negotiable. The takeaway is straightforward. Cleveland must convert last season's progress into a stable framework, protect the quarterback, deepen critical positions, and establish a plan that survives injuries and short-term setbacks. Without that, the games that fueled optimism will remain temporary.
If you're a betting man, who do you think starts for the Browns at quarterback?
Okay, this is the situation. Kenny Pickett, they actually traded for him. Joe Flacco, no one's bringing Joe Flacco in the building thinking Joe Flacco's going to be the starter. If Joe Flacco is your starter,
you got a problem.
You have a huge problem. And if they were saying Shedeur was the starter as the 5th rounder, you got a real problem too, because he passed over all these guys in these reps in the offseason in shorts, in bikini shorts, Speedos and stuff. Like, no. That kind of stuff. So I'm not that surprised when you put down a 3rd round pick on a quarterback. You do believe he has a certain skill set.
Jason Kelce stated the obvious. Cleveland committed to a quarterback who hasn't played at an elite level in years, and Joe Flacco's playoff run didn't change the long-term outlook. Ownership appeared more upset that the criticism was public than by the substance of the critique. Many fans agreed. They've seen this pattern before. Rosters age, injuries are inevitable, and when a single contract dominates the cap, one setback at quarterback can undermine the entire season. Kelce's broader point was about structure. The Browns prioritized the high-cost, uncertain starter over depth and contingency. The late-season surge masked issues that remain: limited cap flexibility, thin depth at key positions, and an offense that lacks a credible plan B. Fans recognize how quickly a strong defense can decline with injuries, and how an offense without redundancy stalls. The AFC North raises the stakes. Baltimore with Lamar Jackson sustains a top standard. Cincinnati with Joe Burrow returns to contention when healthy. Pittsburgh rarely slips below .500 under Mike Tomlin and wins with defense and consistency. In that environment, Cleveland can't rely on perfect health or peak form from one player. The path forward is clear. Diversify cap allocation, reinforce the offensive line and receiver depth, carry a legitimate backup plan at quarterback, and install a scheme that functions regardless of who is under center.
Given what we saw yesterday with Shedeur Sanders, somebody on the Cleveland Browns is 100% getting fired, probably by the end of this year. The person who's probably going to end up getting fired is Kevin Stefanski, because I know that he didn't want Shedeur Sanders on the team. It was Andrew Berry who made that pick. You can't really go against your GM. Bad things happen in this situation. But Shedeur Sanders is not without fault for what we saw yesterday. This is the play that we saw yesterday that has the internet just exploding, where Shedeur Sanders took like a 24-yard sack. Half of the internet is saying that this is all Kevin Stefanski's fault.
Cleveland showed progress last season, but the underlying concerns remain. Jason Kelce highlighted them directly. The Browns' long-term plan is fragile, cap-constrained, and overly dependent on perfect health at quarterback. His comments focused attention on structural issues, roster depth, continuity in coaching, and a sustainable offensive approach, rather than a single hot streak. That criticism resonated because it reflected what many around the league already see. Ownership's reaction underscored the sensitivity. Jimmy Haslam has presided over frequent coaching and quarterback changes, and external scrutiny carries weight when it comes from a respected veteran with championship experience. Kelce's remarks reinforce that last year's Joe Flacco stretch was a short-term solution, not a foundation. The team still needs a durable plan that can withstand injuries and inconsistency. The practical takeaway is clear. Stabilize the system, diversify cap usage, and build depth at key positions so the offense functions regardless of who is under center. That includes a coherent development pathway for younger talent such as Shedeur Sanders, with defined practice reps, protection, and scheme alignment. Kelce didn't say anything outrageous. He articulated the gap between a brief surge and a credible long-term contender.
Have the faith of a mustard seed, right? Because this is the greatest resurrection since Jesus the Christ, right? Like at some point, Joe Flacco was thinking about getting into TV, right? Joe Flacco didn't have a job, and then now you not only come back and start for the Cleveland Browns late in the 2023 season, but they came back around to you. You're now the day one starter for a franchise that just 2 years ago was in the playoffs.
The Browns' quarterback situation remains unsettled. Deshaun Watson was expected to be the long-term answer, but injuries and inconsistent play have prevented him from reaching an elite level. When the team turned to Joe Flacco after Watson's season deteriorated, Flacco immediately lifted the offense and produced results that highlighted the gap between expectations and reality. That a 39-year-old late addition could outperform a $230 million starter was not just a short-term surprise, it raised fundamental questions about roster construction and evaluation. Quarterback depth has been fragile, and the late-season surge masked broader structural problems. Jason Kelce's remarks made that clear. Cleveland is vulnerable if the starter is unavailable, cap flexibility is limited, and the offensive plan lacks a stable contingency. His critique drew attention to leadership and planning as much as on-field performance. Jimmy Haslam's strong reaction reflects the pressure on ownership. The organization has promoted a message of stability and progress, but Kelce's assessment suggested those gains are not yet durable. The path forward requires a realistic approach to the cap, a credible backup plan at quarterback, and a system that holds up regardless of personnel.